की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतश्री श्रीमद् अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी जगद्गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतश्री श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Shri Prabhupada. ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्योत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter number 5, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya, and text number 32 today. Please repeat after me. Tamaso bhuta sukshmadir yataha kham lingamatmanaha तामसो भूत सूक्ष्मादिर यतखम लिंगमात्मनः। तामसो भूत सूक्ष्मादिर यतखम लिंगमात्मनः। तामसो भूत सूक्ष्मादिर यतः खम लिंगमात्मनः। Please repeat. तामसो लिंगमात्मनः। तामसो भूत सूक्ष्मादिर भूत सूक्ष्मादिर यथा खम लिंगमात्मनः। तामसो दुःख सूक्ष्मादिर यथा खम लिंगमात्मनः। तामसो भूत सूक्ष्मादिर यथा खम लिंगमात्मनः। तामसो भूत सूक्ष्मादिर यथा खम लिंगमात्मनः। Tamaso, from the mode of passion. Bhuta sukshma adihi, subtle sense objects. Yataha, from which come the sky. Lingam, symbolic representation. Atmanaha, of the Supreme Soul. The translation and purport by Abhay Charna Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The translation: the sky is a product of sound, and sound is the transformation of egoistic passion. In other words, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the Vedic hymns it is said, Etasmat Atmana Akasha Sambhutaha. The sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Those who are egoistic in passion and ignorance cannot conceive of the personality of Godhead. For them, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Tamaso Bhuta Sukshma Adi Yata Kham Lingam Atmana. The sky is a product of sound, and sound is the transformation of egoistic passion. In other words, ignorance, there, here the book says passion. Okay. In other words, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Maybe that's why Srila Prabhupada in the purport he mentions both. He mentions in the second line, those who are egoistic in passion and ignorance cannot conceive of the personality of Godhead. For them, the sky is the symbolic representation of the Supreme Soul. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, we can understand how this verse is specifically targeting that audience, those living entities who cannot understand the God as a person. So for them, there is a lower form of worship that has been given in the Vedas. Like we see in the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna shows the Virat Roop to Arjuna. And in the Virat Purush, Arjuna has seen like a gigantic personality who has thousands and thousands of heads, thousands and thousands of arms, and he has seen a very ghastly form of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that time, Arjuna could not handle it. And then he says that, "Oh Krishna, please come back to your original form, because that is the form that gives me the ultimate pleasure." So we see that even in Bhagavad Gita, there is that Virat Purush. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Virat Purush is also a symbolic representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the people who do not really are on the platform, or they're not up to the standard to understand the person as Supreme Person, as Supreme Personality of Godhead, they have this different symbolic representation. Even in our today's world, if there is an atheistic person And if he is in really bad trouble, if something is bad, really bad happening, and then he wants to try if there is a God and he wants to pray the God, he naturally looks up. He naturally looks in the sky that, oh my God, if you are there, help me. Why? Because it's natural to look in the sky. Sky is a very mysterious thing. It's unlimited. Nobody knows where it starts. No one knows where it ends. And we see so many stars, different variety of planets, and we don't know what actually lies inside the sky. Just like we don't know the supreme God, how, where is the beginning of God, where is the end of God, and how many different varieties of things are there within God. So, in that sense, it is apt representation. Srila Prabhupada, he mentions many a times that the living entities who are rebellious to Krishna in the spiritual world, they are coming to the material world. And they are given a chance to exercise their foolish tendency to try to lord it over, to try to enjoy the material world as God. So Krishna says, you want to become a God, it's not possible here, so you have to go to the material world. In the material world, there is a nice facility where you will think of yourself as God, and you may even completely believe it. It's such a strange thing that one time actually I went to visit my brother, and my nephew, he was playing something on the TV. He was playing a video game. And all of a sudden, after some time, he was rolling on the ground crying that, I died, I died, I died. And I'm like, what are you saying? You're not, you're alive, relax, you're fine. He was like, no, 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 you don't know, you don't understand. They bombed me. They all came, they surrounded me, and somehow, oh my God, I lost my life. And then I was actually watching how the games are designed. It's a virtual reality. It's a first-person game where, you pretend to be a soldier. And what you see is what, if you are actually on the battleground, you see that exact thing, that you have a gun and you are actually seeing that you are in the battlefield. There are so many other enemies and they are trying to kill you. You're trying to kill them. So the living entity in the material world, he also thinks that I am this body, even though the soul has nothing to do with the body. And all the reality around us is like a virtual reality. And in the game, my nephew, he thought that he is that character in the game. He completely identified himself as the character. And when the character was, getting injuries, he was getting pain. This actually doesn't make sense. How is it possible? There is no pain. But somehow, in the mentality, he has accepted that I am that person in that video game. So the same way in the material world, we are all trying to do the same thing. We are all trying to enjoy thinking I am this body, because actually this body doesn't belong to us. This body is just a combination of material elements. And we are thinking that the interactions with the material modes of the nature and the material elements, the interaction between the sense objects and the senses, we take it too seriously. We think that that's us. We think that, oh, someone says something bad to me, then we actually get so much affected. And so-called happiness, if it comes our way, we get so jubilant. Like Srila Prabhupada, he mentions, let me quote Srila Prabhupada, he says that when a living entity actually falls from the spiritual world, when the living entity comes in the material world, he is given different chances, different bodies. So when the living entity becomes a great demigod in the material world, he becomes very jubilant. We enjoy so much as a demigod, we think that's such a nice place. Material world is such a exciting and very happy place. So Srila Prabhupada quotes, when the same living entity is born as an ordinary human being, he is always miserable and in lamentation. When he gets the body of an animal, he is always fearful. That's why all the animals are constantly in fear. Even here, the squirrels, and if you try to feed some nuts to the squirrels, they come to you, but they think like 1,000 times. They come slowly, they go back, they come, they go back. They look around 100 times. They look, because they're so much in stress, they're so much in fear. So that's the animal body is characterized by fear. And the human body, the regular, ordinary human being, they're always in lamentation, always in misery. But in today's world, if you ask someone, how are you doing? They say, I'm doing great. How are you, brother? I'm doing fantastic. But they don't know how much in misery they are. But still, they think they're doing great. They're doing so nice. So there is a very nice story. There was one psychiatrist. There was a very, very famous psychiatrist, and many people who had some, depression and problems, they would come to him. It's a real, true story. They would come to him and they would ask him solutions. As a psychiatrist, he would give him guidance. So one such person came, very, very depressed to this very famous psychiatrist. And he said that I am so much in depression, I have thoughts of suicide. I don't remember when was the last time I actually laughed. I don't remember when was the last time I was actually loved or loved someone. I don't remember any experience of happiness. I'm in so much depression, I'm on the verge of suicide. So this psychiatrist told him, just come here. And there was a window. From the window he said that, do you see out the window? You see that big hill? He said, yes, I see that hill. Yes, I see. On the hill, do you see a big tent? And he said, yes, I see a very big, looks like some party tent. So the psychiatrist told him that this is the tent of the great, grand circus. The world famous circus is there. So I suggest to you that you go and enjoy that circus, especially go and see the show of the world-famous Joker. There is a very great comedian, the Joker, there. And if you go there, you will see him, and when you will hear to his comedy, you will laugh like anything. You will forget all the miseries, all the pains of the world, and you will become so happy. Do you know how I became so famous? Because I always, when whoever comes to me, I always give the prescription as go and see that world famous comedian, the Joker. The Joker in that circus is so funny, you should go and watch him. And that this person, he says, I'm so sorry to inform you, I am that Joker. So this is the world we live in. Smiling faces, crying hearts. On the surface, everyone tries to show that I'm so happy, I have no problems, I'm well off, I'm taken care. But inside there is a lack of fulfillment. Everyone is suffering because there is a lack of love. There is a lack of fulfillment in each one of us. Why? Because we are away from our original family. If you're away from your original family, what happens in this world? Suppose, just try to remember your first experience away from home. When it was the first time you stepped out of your home, your hometown, the streets you grew up, your mother, your father, your cousins, your brother. It was the first time we actually went out. For me, when it was my time to go and join a college, I was maybe only like a couple of 100 kilometers away from my hometown. But all I was thinking was my hometown. All I was thinking is my room, my comfortable bed, my laptop, my computer, my place, my cousins, and all the fun times that we always have. I always constantly thought about it. Practically every week I would come back to the home and just spend one day. That was also enough for me to sustain next week. Why? Because we are so much attached to our home, because that's what we think is our real happy place. So if you apply this principle to the real home, our real home, where our actual real family is, now what has happened is, because we have been, like, first time when we stepped out of home, we miss the home so much. But then we go forward, we get a job, then we find other friends, other relationships, then we completely forget home. My mother calls me, I sometimes answer, I sometimes don't answer. The person who was so attached to home, when it was the first time he stepped out, after like 20 years, that feelings are not there. Why? Because now we have been conditioned. Now I think I'm in America. I'm an American. Now I have so many different things, different varieties of enjoyment. I have nice fancy car. I have nice, now I have a new family, my wife. I have my children. And who cares about my, parents there in, the small village in India? Why? Because that's how the living entity gets engrossed in the material energy, which is highly attractive. That's why the Krishna's external energy, she attracts so much that the living entity becomes forgetful of the real home, becomes forgetful of the real family, and completely gets engrossed in enjoyment, so-called enjoyment. And the next thing the external energy of Krishna does to a living entity is she kicks him. So first there is attraction, and then there is punishment. So avarnatmika, Maya attracts the living entity. And then prakshekatmika, so she kicks the living entity on the face. And when the living entity is kicked on the face, then the living entity starts to think, oh, what have I done? I have given up on my real family, who were my real well-wishers, and I'm foolishly enjoying in the so-called material world. That's why Maya's punishments are equally important as her allurements. Actually, our acharyas, they explain, when the material energy kicks a living entity, that's actually the best thing that can happen to you. Because that will remind us of our real home and our real relationships. Just like when someone gets completely frustrated, then, the person who is enjoying the American luxury, and he has forgotten the family, that whatever place he is coming from. And when he gets frustrated, when he gets, in problems, then he has nowhere else to go than back to his family. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that actually Krishna consciousness movement is only to reconnect ourselves with our original home, with our original loving spiritual family. So in that sense we can understand. And here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that for those people who have not come on that platform where they can understand, where the remembrance has not come, so for them there is like a lower way of worship. They can see the sky. Those who are egoistic in passion and ignorance, they cannot understand personality of Godhead. So there is a symbolic representation of Supreme Soul. Like Arjuna said after he saw the Virat Rupa, he says, Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Vibhum Ahustvam Rishah Sarve Devarshi Naradas Tatha Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. So in that he says, Sarvametad Ritam Manya Yanmam Vadasi Keshava. Na hite Bhagavan Vyaktim Viduh Devana Danavaha. No one can understand your real personality. When people can understand you as a supreme Brahman, or someone may say that God is impersonal, someone may say God is light, somebody says that God is just a great energy. No one can understand you. What to talk of the ordinary people, even the demigods. No one can understand the God as a person. Nahite Bhagavan Vyaktim means the personality of Godhead. Viduhu Deva na Danava. So even the demigods cannot understand, and even demons cannot understand you. So how can we understand the supreme personality of Godhead? So Srila Prabhupada, he mentions that the path of devotional service, bhakti, is designed in such a way where when someone starts to lovingly serve Supreme Personality of Godhead, when someone comes in touch with the spiritual master, just by that connection with this spiritual master, the remembrance and the loving sentiments for the Supreme Personality of Godhead will automatically start to revive. So Srila Prabhupada especially, he mentions that in today's verses about the sound, the sky is a product of sound. So Srila Prabhupada's quote is, sound is a very powerful form of material energy. Srila Prabhupada says that when someone is in deep sleep, the only thing that can wake him up is sound. So if somebody is sleeping in deep sleep, just like we are in the slumber, we are also in deep sleep in the Maya. So how can you wake up a sleeping person? Put a nice TV and show him nice movie. He doesn't care because he's completely in sleep. Or if you make some very nice preparations and let him smell, he may not wake up. So the actual sense that really wakes a person is sound. So Srila Prabhupada says, a dog sees with his nose and a Vaishnava sees with his ears. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that means we have to take the words of the spiritual master and we should only see through the words of the spiritual master. That's called Shabda Praman. We should take the words of the spiritual master and only see through them, not through the charma chakshu, not through the ordinary eyes. So that's why the supreme object of worship is the personality of Godhead. And that can be achieved only through the words emanating from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master. That's the only way one can understand the real personality of Godhead. So here in this context we see that Maitreya is starting to describe about the personality of Godhead, but he's not jumping on the actual topic. Before that, he's also starting to speak about the material elements, how the material world is arranged, how the things are combined, and how they interact with the material modes, and how the material modes interact with the senses, and how mind, and then it's building up. It's called Sankhya. So from Sankhya, you will see in the further verses how the personality of Godhead will unfold. So that's why in Srimad Bhagavatam, the 8 primary principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, they say, Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Paramakhaha, Vasudeva Parayoga, Vasudeva Parakriya, Vasudeva Param Jnanam, Vasudeva Param Tapa, Vasudeva Paro Dharmo, Vasudeva Paragati, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. That's the 8 primary principles of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vasudeva Paraveda. The ultimate object to be known is Vasudeva. Srila Prabhupada mentions the personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is also known as Vasudeva. And the main object of sacrifices is also to satisfy Vasudeva. Vasudeva Paraveda, Vasudeva Para Yoga. Yoga, the main object of yoga is not to do some, exercises, do some weird poses and think that we are so spiritual. No. The actual object of yoga, Vasudeva Para Yoga. The main objective of yoga is to understand Vasudeva. And all the austerities anyone is performing, it only has to be to attain Vasudeva. Vasudeva Param Jnanam, the actual real knowledge, means the knowledge about Krishna, Vasudeva. Vasudeva Param Jnanam, Vasudeva Param Tapa, Vasudeva Paro Dharmo. The real dharma is to lovingly worship and lovingly serve Vasudeva. And the final, 8th principle is Vasudeva Paragati, the ultimate supreme object, the supreme goal of everyone is to attain that supreme personality of Vasudeva. And iti Shri Vasudeva Sarvam iti. So understand that even this material world and even every single particle in the material world, everything is completely filled with Krishna. Entire, every particle, everything is filled with Krishna. To understand that Krishna is in every particle. One can see Krishna in every person and in every particle. And in that sense, we are never separated from Krishna. Nor is Krishna separated from us. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sa cha me na pranashyati. So in that sense, if we see everything in connection with Krishna and everyone as Krishna's part and parcel, so Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, such a person is never lost to me and I am never lost to that person. So that's the main objective here. So we'll stop here. If anybody has any questions about anything, we can take or we can stop. Any comments? Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.